If you're constantly looking for the next hit of stimulation, you can't sit alone quietly, you can't stand it, or you always whip out your phone to distract yourself, then this video could really help you beat that habit for good, to beat boredom. A few years ago, I was in a similar mess to this. I had a phone addiction, I used all the social media you could imagine. I couldn't sit on a bus or a train or stand in a queue without some form of entertainment, without looking at my phone. I found life pretty boring unless I was stimulating myself in some way. I was easily bored, I was restless, I was unsatisfied. But over time, I've discovered that boredom is not a given. It's really a habit that we either train ourselves to have or we train ourselves out of. Boredom is a vice, and it's actually getting worse and worse with time. After training myself out of this habit, I'm happy to say that I don't have those problems anymore. In fact, I actually savour the moments of quiet, the dead moments, as we tend to call them, because they take me into a deep sense of presence and fulfilment that doesn't require any form of stimulation. So today we're going to talk about the problem of boredom and how it's getting worse over time. We're going to talk about how it's a vicious cycle that can eventually lead you to quite dark places. We're going to look at why we feel bored, and we're going to cover the methods that I've used to beat boredom for good. This can help you dramatically improve your quality of life. You're going to start to savour and even crave moments of low stimulation, which might sound crazy right now, but it's totally possible. I'm going to show you how to do that. And you're going to start feeling the release, the sense of rest and peace and presence that you get when you fully tune into the present, when you fully tune into these quiet moments. So it's crucial we talk about the problem of boredom, and I want you to identify whether you are a bored person or not overall. How often do you feel bored? Can you sit and do nothing, or does it make you feel tense and uneasy? Do you need your phone to keep you occupied? Do you actively avoid moments of quiet? Ask yourself these questions and be very honest about it. And if many of them point towards that you can't stand, the lack of stimulation, then it's likely that you're quite a bored person. People tend to avoid the feeling of boredom, and I think it's actually getting worse and worse as time goes on because of social media and smartphones and the internet and instant communication and so on. Basically, we have a way to distract ourselves from the feeling of boredom as soon as it arises, and we have no tolerance for it anymore. As soon as we feel that sensation, our reaction is so programmed. We just, we whip out the phone and we start looking at whatever. And when you get into this habit, and this is how you go about your life, you don't realize the effect it has on you. Basically, what happens is that you're scared of moments where nothing exciting is happening to you, nothing is titillating you. And isn't that sad? You don't realize that your entire life becomes about avoiding the feeling of boredom because you can't stand it. The sad part is that boredom isn't even that unpleasant when you really feel it. And boredom is not a given. So it's not a given that if you don't have anything exciting you, or if you're sitting on a train or a bus or whatever, or you're waiting in a queue, that you have to feel bored. That is not a given. The thing is, when you've trained yourself to avoid it so much, it becomes a given, because immediately you start labeling these situations as negative and unpleasant. You can train yourself not to feel bored. I can promise you that. And if you do train yourself, you're going to be able to feel the boredom rather than run away from the boredom and, just perpetuating this cycle that you've been perpetuating for however many years now. And we don't do this through some drug or some new video game or by some new smartphone that has some other anti-boredom feature. We do this by changing how we relate to each of our moments. To understand how this method works, we need to understand what happens when we don't have any input. And this explains the thinking behind the method, which is to direct your attention in a very specific way towards something. Let's look at what happens when you experience boredom. Let's say you're sitting on a bus or you're sitting on a train, nothing's really going on around you, you're sitting on your own, and you get that feeling of boredom inside of you. What will happen, and this is pretty much the quintessential human experience, is that basically your mind it'll go into thinking mode. You're going to start thinking about the past, you're going to start thinking about the future, you're going to start commenting on your current situation, you're going to start thinking thoughts of, I wish we could arrive, this is so boring. You're going to start commenting on what's around you, like the people around you or the things you're seeing around you. And the problem with this is that automatically your mind goes into negative mode. That's what the mind does. There's actually a famous quote from a Harvard researcher that is, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So what happens is your mind starts up and it usually just goes into negative mode. So it's not just that you're thinking about things, it's actually you're thinking about negative things. The problem with this is that it makes this experience of sitting on the bus or sitting on a train, which is kind of a neutral experience, it starts to make it negative because you're going into negativity mode. And this makes it impossible. If you have a tendency for boredom, it makes it even more likely that you're just going to go to your old, anti-boredom measures, because you don't want to sit there and have your thoughts with you. So to avoid that happening so much, what we're actually going to do is we're going to direct our attention in a very specific way. And in that way, we engage the mind. We don't just let it go. We don't just, sit there and not do anything. We're going to do something, but it's low stimulation, but we're directing our attention enough that the mind isn't going to activate and it's not going to go into negative mode. Well, it might, but we're doing something specific to occupy it. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, whenever it goes into that mode, you then return to the exercise that we're going to do. So here is how I beat boredom forever. The solution is really very simple, and it's called soak into the senses. It seems so simple when you do it consistently. You wonder why you never did it. You wonder why no one ever spoke about it to you. You wonder why no one ever taught it to you. It doesn't require your phone. It doesn't require reading. It doesn't require occupying your attention necessarily. It doesn't require stimulation of any kind, and I think that's the important thing. We are not only beating boredom, we're unhooking from stimulation. And I could go into a full meditative explanation of this, but the key is really to look around you attentively and to listen attentively to what's going on around you. So let's talk about the looking part. You want to look around you attentively. So you sort of slowly look around your environment. You look at the different details, you look at the colours, you look at the shapes and sizes and so forth, the movement, if there's any movement. This might seem a bit strange the first time you do it. Why am I looking around? This is so weird. Why can't I just sit and look at my phone? This is like a retraining. So you have to trust me here that even if it feels a bit strange to begin with, you're going to really notice the reason why. You're going to understand the reason why, and you're going to notice the benefits of doing it quite quickly. Not only does this engage your mind in some way, as we said, we're deliberately focusing our mind into some sort of activity or task. Not only that, but it keeps you in the present, because everything that's around you in the senses is already happening in the present. Sure, you can comment on it and it can bring up memories and it can put you into rumination mode or whatever. But fundamentally, that sensory input is in the present because it can't be anywhere else if you're seeing it or hearing it. So you're bringing yourself into the present, and that's one of the problems with boredom, is that you're actually not in the present. The more heightened your experience of the present becomes, the less likely you are to feel bored, because you're going to actually enjoy the present. That's one of the things that happens when you're bored. You're not actually enjoying the present. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other option is to listen to the sounds around you. So instead of looking around and looking at the details and looking at the colours and the shapes and the sizes and so on, what you're doing is you're listening for the different sounds around you. You tune into them. You listen to the pitch and the tone and the movement and the volume and so on. And you just listen. And this has the same effect as working with sight does, because it keeps you in the present. It directs your attention towards something specific, and it keeps you in the present. Those are just two really simple ways of really enjoying the present and not feeling bored with the present moment. I don't want to say they're ways of occupying your mind, because that's really the wrong way of looking at it. That implies we're trying to run away. We are not trying to run away. We're not trying to use up time. We're not trying to take our mind off things. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to really go into the present, and in doing that, we are going directly against the reason that we are bored, which is that we're really not enjoying the present at all. We're not alive. We're not awake to what is happening around us. This directly untrains your boredom habit. It doesn't require you manipulating the moment in any way. So we're not, as I said, we're not getting a fancy new phone or a new game on our phone, or we're not, getting some other little thing that is going to distract us for half an hour as we're doing this. No, we're going against the grain here. It just requires a bit more attention, a bit more care than what you're usually used to if you really struggle with boredom. You're tuning into the senses, and you actually, in a way, you know how to do this already because you are constantly interacting with the senses. It just requires a bit more care and attention, and the bravery to do it, even when it feels a bit weird to begin with. One thing you're going to notice as you're doing this is something I call habituation. This is a very interesting feature of the human mind, and it can explain a lot of the reason that we feel bored, the reason we feel unfulfilled in our lives. On one hand, habituation is positive because it allows us to become used to our environment. It allows us to quickly categorize different situations and familiar contexts and not have it be sort of overwhelming and having to relearn and re-understand what's going on around us. On the other hand, and this is really relevant to our discussion here, habituation makes you bored with life. What habituation is our tendency, basically after a certain amount of times of either seeing something or hearing something, the mind starts to tune out the experience, and the experience loses its intensity, and the fulfillment that you derive from it decreases too. So let's say you're sitting on a train and you're working on this technique, one of the two techniques I've shown you for how to soak into the senses, and you're seeing a tree, and you're looking at the tree for a few seconds, everything's nice, you're seeing the different shapes, colours, and the sizes, and the shadows, and the movement, and so on, and you're enjoying it. Then what's going to happen probably is, after a certain amount of time, you're going to go, oh, that's just a tree. I've seen a tree 1,000 times. What am I doing this for? This is pathetic. How can I enjoy looking at a tree? Why not just let me take out my phone instead? That is one of the effects of habituation, is all your old interpretations come in, and you're just no longer seeing the thing as it is. You can no longer remain in the present. And actually, this is one of the main reasons that you feel boredom in your life. It's not because life is boring. It's not because things are inherently unsatisfying. It's actually, a lot of it is due to habituation, because you're so habituated, you're so used to your senses that you just start tuning them out. You're not really using your senses. You're not in the present anymore. You're actually just seeing and hearing the present through all your interpretations and all your memories and all your categories. You're no longer actually just sensing it as it is. And that's one thing we're working against directly in this exercise. You're going to have to overcome your tendency for habituation if you want to overcome boredom to any meaningful degree. So the good news is the soaking into the senses exercise, it directly works against habituation, because you are trying to notice, when are you gone? When's your attention gone? When's it commenting? When are you in the past? When you're in the future? And just bring yourself back to the raw experience of either what you're seeing or what you're hearing. So let's talk about how soaking in helps you beat boredom. Soaking in to the senses is deeply fulfilling in a way that having your mobile isn't, because you're not searching for something. With your phone, isn't it true that you're constantly searching for something? So even if you go on, you go on TikTok, you watch one video, but that isn't enough. You need to search again. So you watch another video, that doesn't quite do it. So you search again, and you just keep on that loop. It never really satisfies. You're constantly seeking, because the phone by nature is got so much information on it, so many possibilities on it, that you never really feel fully satisfied. Because first of all, your whole attitude is one of escape. And second of all, the phone it constantly makes you feel you're missing out on something. This exercise is the exact opposite, because you're deliberately tuning into the present, and you're not doing it to feel different. You're not doing it to beat boredom with a stick. You're doing it to retrain yourself, to retrain your attention skills. It's fundamentally different in this way. And in that, because you're retraining yourself, you're actually learning how to become fulfilled in a way that isn't dependent on having something. You've already got your senses. It's a natural human experience. You're just retraining yourself so that you can actually enjoy it, rather than tuning it out, becoming habituated, and so on. This is why it helps you beat boredom, because it's a kind of retraining of your mind. What you're going to find is, in making this very small change, small in that it's subtle, but it can be a huge change in that it's very dramatic, you start to contact this deep fulfillment just by being in the senses. You realize that you never have to distract yourself as long as you can pay attention to the senses, because the senses are always available to you. And actually, the more you train, the better it becomes, because your focus muscles are strengthening. You're going to appreciate the colors more. You're going to appreciate the movement more. You're going to appreciate the shapes more. You're going to see the variety of the visual field. And the same with the sounds as well. You're going to hear things much more deeply because you're training. It's like when a musician trains their musical ear, or when an artist trains their eye to see the details and to see colors and to appreciate how the whole scene interacts and how it all works and what emotions it produces in the viewer. You become a connoisseur of the senses, and so this becomes a natural delight for you. No longer do you need to whip out your phone. You're fascinated by the senses. You love it. You feel very fulfilled. And this is, when you do this, you kind of realize that this is what being alive is really about. It's not about distracting myself. It's about drinking it in as much as I can. After a certain amount of time doing this, it won't actually feel like a challenge. When you first do it, it might feel quite torturous, to be quite honest with you. But over time, it's going to become less and less of a challenge and more just natural. It's going to feel natural to you because you're retraining yourself. It also won't feel like you're trying to escape boredom. I'm talking about beating boredom. I'm saying that because it's true, but I'm not saying it because we're trying to run away here. We are changing our relationship to the present moment. And in doing so, we're changing our relationship to boredom, seeing that it's something that we train, either in a negative sense or in a positive sense, in that we train ourselves away from boredom. You experience this big reversal in that you actually start enjoying these moments, these dead moments, as we call them, which are only really dead because we are dead. Our senses are dead. We're not living in the senses. And you actually start to crave them. Instead of craving the mobile phone and the hit or the apparent hit that it brings you that never really fulfills you, you crave the opposite. You crave, not that you want to be a hermit and live in the mountains, but you crave just those moments of just the simple present, just paying attention to the simple present without having to do anything else. And this is going to really deeply impact your life because you're going to start feeling this peace and this sense of rest, this sense of presence that you can tap into wherever you are without depending on anyone or anything or depending on what's on TikTok or social media. You're going to feel it and you're going to love it. And you're going to know that when you're not feeling it, not that we have to feel necessarily ecstatic all the time, but when you feel bored and you feel like disconnected from the present moment, it's because you're not in the senses. You're going to know that. And then once you go back into the senses, you're going to recontact that sense of peace again. All right, folks, I recommend you put this habit into place as soon as possible. It might not work overnight. This takes training. You might do it for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and then slowly up it until you no longer start whipping out your phone in dead moments. Not that you have to always sit on a bus or a train or whatever and not have any form of entertainment. That's not what I'm saying. But you're not doing it to avoid. You're doing it because you want to do it. You're not a slave to distracting yourself anymore. I have to say, having experience in meditation also really helps with this. So you might want to check out my beginner's meditation course, which gives you like the key mindfulness techniques. And I'm pretty sure we do some work with the senses there. And you get a bit more theory and a bit more of a formal technique to work on. And really, all of my work, the goal of everything I do is to help you be at more peace with yourself, to be more fulfilled, to find a deeper purpose, to live more deeply, to feel deeply. It all links together in the end. And I think this part of beating boredom is a really crucial part of that. And it's a problem that we're really facing in the modern world. And, well, here you go. You have the method. You just have to go and apply it now. So do subscribe to keep following along with me here as I continue to publish content on the channel and on the website. Take care. I hope you enjoy this method, and I'll see you soon.